Let's do a practice problem going over standard deviation. Remember that standard deviation is the measure of how each value in a dataset varies or deviates from the average. This is the equation for standard deviation, and before you get scared, it's really not that bad. Let's go over each part. X bar, or the X with the line on top, is the mean or the average. X just represents a data point. N is the number of data points. I like to call this symbol the big E, but this is a summation sign. This just means we have to add up all the values that are in the parentheses. And then this funky sign is the square root. That just means we have to square root the number that falls within it. Now, here are all the directions to calculate for standard deviation. I'm not going to read each one of these to you. You can take a screenshot if you want. I'd rather go over a practice problem with you and go through each of these steps. All right, so here's our data set. The numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If we calculate the average, or the X bar, it's going to be 3. To do that, I just added up all the numbers and divided by 5, because there are 5 data points. By the way, that also tells us N. N, remember, is just the total number of data points, and we have 5 data points. So we already have 2 variables. Now we just have to start plugging some of these variables in. Basically, what we have to do is we have to take each data point and subtract the average from it. We square all of those numbers, and then we find the sum of all of the numbers. I know it sounds confusing. Let's just go over how to do it. So what you have to do is you have to take each data point and subtract the mean from it. In this case, 1 minus 3 is negative 2. Then you have to take each one of these numbers and square it. So negative 2 squared is 4. And as you can see, we did this for each number. 2 minus 3 is negative 1, squared is 1. 3 minus 3 is 0, 0 squared is 0, so on and so forth. So again, we're basically just doing this part right here. Now that we've calculated every data point and its variation from the mean, we have to add all of them together. So we take 4 plus 1 plus 0 plus 1 plus 4 and get a total of 10. So again, we now have this top number. So what we can do is we can plug it in here. So standard deviation equals the square root of 10 divided by n minus 1. We already know n is 5, so we can plug that in. So standard deviation is the square root of 10 divided by 5 minus 1. And that means the standard deviation equals the square root of 10 divided by 4, or the square root of 2.5. And if we put that into a calculator, it's going to give us the standard deviation equals 1.58. Now, what does this mean? Well, we have to use this in a normal distribution, or otherwise known as a bell curve. We place 3 here, which is our average, and we add 1.58 and subtract 1.58. This is our first standard deviation, and 68% of all the data should fall between these two numbers. Then we add and subtract another 1.58. Those numbers would be 6.16 and negative 0.16. 95% of all data should fall between these two numbers. And we can go on to 3 standard deviations if we subtract and add another 1.58. Remember that 99% of all data should fall in 3 standard deviations.